There we go. We are live.
Live again. Number 5.
Yep. How's it going, Jared?
Good. Just came back from seeing The Flash.
Nice.
So it was pretty good.
Okay. Was it as good as Spider-Man?
It was different. But all you got to know is Michael Keaton is Batman. So
Okay.
all the reason to go see it.
Okay. I'll have to do that in my copious amounts of free time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was good.
Okay. Got any Toddler Tales for us?
We went to Minnesota this week. Or this past week. No. We flew.
Okay.
We flew to go see Grace's family. There's like 30 of them out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Judo picked up so many words. And none of them bad, just like he's now speaking full English sentences.
Ooh.
Just full on, like having full conversations with us. And so Grace was home with him this evening. I think it was something like she was telling me when I got home. He wanted $1.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Oh, you want $1?" He was like, "Well, I want $100." Like that clear. Not just $1, Mom. $100. And we're like, when did you start speaking full English? Like, it's a lot of words for a kid that still needs his butt wiped.
There we go. Yeah, Lily has learned how to pinch and bite when she's tired. It's a joy.
Ouch.
Yep.
No, absolutely not.
She is at the point now, though, where she like when she's not tired and she's not biting and pinching, she wants to be a big helper. So she's been seeing me painting the new house recently. So when we go to the new house, she'll run over and she'll grab a paint can and she'll lift it up and carry it and follow me around with it.
That's helpful.
Yeah. Today, something really cute. Lindsay wasn't feeling too well, so she laid down upstairs. And Lindsay told Lily, Mama's not feeling well. And so Lily found the best thing to do for Mama. She runs out, grabs Mama's books, and brings Mama her books and puts the books down in front of Lindsay.
That's helpful.
Yeah, so Lindsay had a box with her summer reading pile in it. And so Lily was taking that out and bringing it over to her.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but then somewhere in there, a switch gets flipped, and she goes from wanting to be extremely helpful to being crazy because she's delusionally tired.
Yeah, that's what happens with toddlers.
Yep.
Here's a bonus one. It was just this past Christmas, actually. And we're going to Christmas Eve service, and I got Judah ready. And, it's Christmas Eve service, right, at church, so we're all dressed up. And then Grace is like, Judah, you look so handsome. He says, no, Mom, I sexy.
Oh, boy.
You're like, what? Where did you learn that word? And why are you calling yourself that?
How did you know to use it in this context?
I don't know. I don't even know how to ask those questions anymore.
Man.
He just comes up with all the words.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we are in the single digits left with this Kickstarter.
Yeah. It's towards the end. And it's a good thing because we have I don't know, a week and a day.
We have 8 days to go.
A week.
8 days to go. But the good news is we're 80%. We are 80% of the way there. So we are within striking distance.
Yep. Yeah. We're almost there. 8,000 out of the 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at this point, I'm not feeling too stressed. I still want some churches to come through on the concert level. But honestly, if you're watching this and it's still June, you're watching this within 8 days, go ahead and just like put down $10 or $20 for the CD or the digital download. Because if we have what would it be? If we have 20 people get the digital download, then we're good. And if we have did I do that math right? 20 people do the digital down. I probably did not do that math right. I'm too tired right now. Okay. Never mind. Hold on. So
Get our calculators out.
Yeah. Hold on. Because I have an American mush mind. Okay. So the digital download is... Oh, man. What tier is that? Okay. So the lowest you can go in at is the digital package for $10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so no, never mind. We don't need 20 people to go in at $10. We would need 200 people to go in at $10.
Yeah.
Which would be awesome.
That'd be super great.
What I'd really like, best case scenario right now is 100 people go in at the CD tier.
Yes.
Well, I guess best case scenario is 200 people go in at the digital download tier, and then I don't have to mail them anything.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. But yeah. So, but honestly, even like the little donation, like the earlier packages, the $10 and $20 tiers would go so far right now. So if you know someone who would like to support local worship leaders in writing congregationally friendly, poetically rich, theologically sound music for church, send them the link to the Kickstarter and say, hey, yeah, just give them $10. It's going to get them closer. They're 80% of the way there. They're almost there.
Yep. Literally around the corner.
Literally right around the corner. I have the feeling that we will get to go into the studio this summer.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be good. It'll be really good.
Means I just made more work for myself, though. I'm looking forward to it, though. Yeah. I know a couple of my family members have given at the concert tier. So this summer, we're probably going to end up doing a little mini tour in Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah. What's it, just one concert? Right?
No, I think it's going to be at least 2.
At least 2.
And
right.
if my old church comes through, then that would be 3 in Virginia.
Wow.
Yeah, we'd have to like take a week off work or something and just go touring in Virginia.
Oh, man. I don't know how my wife's going to feel about this.
Yep. Okay. But we are 80% of the way there. It's looking good, but we can still use help. So if you're listening to this and it's still before June 23rd, go to Kickstarter and back Christ the Hope of Glory.
Please.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. So, Jared, today you have come up with the topic for today. What is it?
Lessons learned in ministry. You know, top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Just things we learn over time. Maybe the easy way or the hard way.
How long have you been in vocational ministry? So actually as paid on staff.
Paid on staff. Almost 8 years.
Almost 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's little baby time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Considering all the men that I know, and
yeah,
but 8 years.
I am at 7 years vocational ministry.
Yeah.
So I started as assistant to the pastor at Wycombe. Not assistant pastor, assistant to the pastor.
Mm-hmm.
That was while I was in, basically it was an intern position while I was in grad school.
Right.
Then I was full-time at Graceway for almost 2 years. And now I've been at Calvary as the worship director for over 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember all those transitions you had.
Yep.
I mean, if you count ministry leadership, I don't know, that probably adds another 3 or 4 years for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but no, we're limiting this to vocational ministry.
Vocational, yeah.
Yeah, you've just been at one church, right? For all 7 of those years?
Yeah. All going on 8, yeah.
Oh yeah, you're 8. I'm 7.
Yeah. At Crossing.
So that means between us, we have 15 years of ministry experience. Vocational ministry experience.
Yep.
And when you have 15 years of experience between the two of you, you learn a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two.
Yeah. A little bit. Lots more to see.
Yes. So we're not in the newbie phase, the wide-eyed, inexperienced, but we're also not at the veteran status yet. So take this section for what it's worth. These are guys who are still settling in.
Yeah. And maybe have experienced a little charring, a little toastiness around the edges.
Get a little toasty around the edges, just a little. So, but hopefully this is a conversation that will help you. So this is a conversation probably helpful for those of you who, if you're looking to go into ministry and to make ministry your vocation, this is a good conversation for you.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go over some of the, what was it? You said top 3 lessons that we've learned from ministry?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
probably will overlap.
Yeah. How do we want to do this? We're going to go one and one? You do one, I do one?
Yeah, we could do it. We could do it that way. I guess we're talking. So I started out, first one anyway. I started out as a youth director, youth leader at our church. I ran the youth student ministry and wasn't brought on to music. I was part of the music, and I would step in for the guy that we had at the time. Mm-hmm. But I didn't take that on until like my second year ish. But it kind of all melds together. And one of the things that I learned quickly as like a fresh out of school, right? That was the first time. So when I graduated with my master's in counseling and bachelor's in youth and family ministry, knowledge and the stuff you learn, the glitz and the glamour, the letters after your name, the credentials, whatever it is, they're not enough. Like that stuff doesn't matter. And people get mad at me if I just leave it there. But really what matters at the end of the day, this is especially true for music ministry. And I think I probably would say one of the passions that you and I have, Dan, is that worship leaders, if you're listening to this, whatever year it is, or what have you, your skills aren't enough. Your primary goal is to shepherd people. It is a pastoral position. And so
even if you don't have pastor in your title.
Even if you don't. And no matter who's in that position, in that ministry position, and some churches have women, and I'm not here to talk about complementarian or egalitarian issues. Whoever's in that position, it's a shepherding role. And don't take it lightly. and don't think that you can just do years. I mean, you can get through ministry on your own skills, but your skills in how well you play guitar or piano, that only get you so far, man. And I tried it, and it doesn't work. It won't. It's not enough. You need to be humble enough to realize that. I had to be humble enough to realize that, and there was some hurt. I hurt people. You hurt people when you think about ministry and the areas of ministry that you're in that way. What are you going to say?
I was going to say it's the skills is not enough, but it's still essential to have. But you can't just stop there. If you stop there, you're only halfway up the ladder.
Yeah.
But also, if you don't have them, if you don't have the skills, then you've missed half of the ladder.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that people who are in the position or listening to this have the chops to be leading on a Sunday morning, So there's some, I'm giving that to all of us anyway already.
There are going to be some churches though where someone just finds themselves thrown into the role, and they're taking they've just been they're the only person in their church taking guitar lessons, and all of a sudden their pastor says, "Hey, you're all we got," and they're like, "I want to. Okay, I'll serve the Lord." It's for someone in that
to that
position,
person too. To that person too, I'd say take heart, because the skills are secondary in terms of shepherding. They're essential, and grow in your craft and grow in your knowledge of your instrument. But how you love people and how you take care of people and how you shepherd people. And if you're in a larger church like I was, you're going to inherit people that you don't think are super great sometimes, and they are more important. They are more important than what you sound like, and God uses them. And so,
I guess that also goes along with the what your church's philosophy of worship is as well. Because both of us come from a volunteer basis. We're the only paid musicians on staff,
right?
And then we guide volunteers. And in that instance, it's really important to put the people first. But I can see a church that pays musicians. If you are paying your musicians, then you have to hold them to a certain standard.
Yeah.
So in that case, that's a more professional context. That's a different situation.
Usually larger churches. I know H.B. Charles's church does that.
Yeah.
They have hired musicians.
Yeah, if you're going to pay someone, you got to pay. They have to perform worthy of their wage.
Yep.
Which is, if you're in a volunteer position, remember that's one of the freedoms there, is that you have the freedom to grow.
Yep.
You don't have to be the professional proficient to be on the volunteer team. You just have to be growing towards that.
Right.
Yeah, that's not.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say that's not a excuse to be mediocre. Don't be like the priests in Malachi offering blemished offerings to God.
No. Yeah, there's a part of it too. I think that sometimes people, especially volunteer basis, right? Mm-hmm. Those people only have so much time.
Yeah.
Right. So in my context, those people, they just give unto the Lord as much as they can. And that's what it is. And so part of that too, if you're walking into a ministry experience, coupled with, your primary role, and that's how I want to couch this, is that your primary role as a worship leader is to shepherd your people. You're shepherding your volunteer team, and you're shepherding your church through music. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when you're doing that, that's your focus. It's the people. It's the people who are leading with you, right? Who are alongside of you, who are, in a lot of cases, shepherding alongside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's your primary function.
Yeah, going off that point, last week or the week before, I gave one of my electric guitar players a couple leads. Now, to me, these are very simple leads, but that's also because I majored in guitar in college.
Right.
And so I give these lead lines to my electric guitarist during rehearsal, and this is on me. I should have made him aware of them before rehearsal. But I gave them to him during rehearsal, and I see the look on his face. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give him any more. And it was later that week, talking with him, he's like, yeah. I'm like, when am I going to learn these things? Because I got work, I got this, I have this project, I have to renovate my bathroom at home.
Mm-hmm.
When am I actually going to sit down and do these?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard because we are very blessed that our job is to music.
Right.
And so for other people, they have to work around the job to music. We get to music at our job.
Right. And a large part of that too is we maybe expect our church to be in a different place than we want it to be, right? Or our volunteer teams to be in a different place than where we want them to be. But I'll say this, don't let the church that you're serving in, right, become maybe an enemy or a stumbling block to the church that you desire to be in more. Does that make sense?
Elaborate.
So we have a dream or maybe a vision of what we see the church and how it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let that dream or vision hinder you from shepherding the people that God has placed you with now.
So don't snap at people because they're not living up to the expectation, the vision in your head.
Right. Because that's just a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for burnout.
It's a vision is good for giving the leader direction and giving the leader. Like I think one of the things that we can do is, when we get those visions in those places we want to go, instead of looking at the deficiencies in our people, we should look at what are practical steps that we as leaders can take to help them reach that place, reach that vision.
Exactly.
For me, I actually had a conversation with one of my volunteers recently about this, and one of the practical steps that came out of it was, okay, we want people to be more prepared at rehearsal. People are coming to rehearsal and they haven't listened to the songs, they haven't prepared for them. How do we change that? And the practical step I came up with is like, okay, well, what if I go and I put the songs in Planning Center a week earlier than I normally do? So then, instead of having 1 or 2 weeks, they have 2 or 3 weeks to look at the songs. Yep. So that puts more work on my end to be more proactive in getting the set lists up, but it gives my volunteers more time to look it over and more time to be aware.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, we've reached 9:55 and we've gotten your first point.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
My first point is actually very closely related to yours, and it is volunteers are people too.
Yeah.
And so looking at volunteers not just as cogs in a machine or people who fulfill a role, but as people. So it's important for the worship leader to know, number one, the names of everyone on your team, their family members' names, who's important to them, and then also what's going on in their life. This is one of the reasons why my team, every week, we sit down and we pray in a circle. We pray for the person on your left. Mm-hmm. So before the service or during rehearsal, we'll say, okay, how can I'll turn to the person on my left and say, okay, Diane, how can I be praying for you? And then Diane will share with the group. I only have to remember one prayer request now. And then Diane turns to the person on her left. Andrew, how could I be praying for you? Drew turns to the person on his left. Heather, how can I be praying for you? And you go around this circle, And all of a sudden, you have this group of volunteers who are now a small group who are all praying for each other. And then what's great is the next week or the week after, hey, how did this go? Hey, any update on this?
Yeah.
So that's just one of those like really practical steps to treating volunteers like people and not just cogs.
Yeah. I think that's great. I have nothing to add to that. We do a lot of the same stuff, pray weekly with the team that I'm leading with that week. So like Tuesday night rehearsal, that night, no matter what time we get done, we sit down and pray for each other. Yep.
So what's your point number 2?
It kind of goes off these things that we're kind of talking about is we have a large platform and we talk about it all the time. And we like to say, this doesn't happen, we give it to the Lord, but it is so tempting to make a name for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Don't make a name for yourself. Don't do it. And that happens in subtle ways that we don't know. That happens in our desires, to grow in our craft for our own glory. When we get up on a Sunday, and we're up there and we're like, man, we sounded great. You know what I mean? Or you get a lot of compliments. It's hard to not embody those.
Yeah, that's one of those like every day having to like refocus and say, okay, God, you get the glory.
Crucify yourself, man. It's all about crucify the self in those moments, and I get all the time, like some people ask me, well, what do you say in those moments? Like, I just say thank you and I move on. I don't make a fuss about it. I don't make a big deal about it. A part of it, I think, was Sproul. I want to say it was RC, but I learned from him, if it is him, I apologize if it's not, but when he was alive, the late RC Sproul, he would talk about before he would go up to preach, because he had a large platform. He would preach and he would say, before he was going up there, and even up until he started preaching, in his own head, he was praying, I believe in the Holy Spirit. I believe in the power of the Holy Spirit. Lord, humble me, and just a constant reminder of both the Spirit empowering us to give glory to God, and the power of the resurrection as a way of humbling himself, not to make a name for himself, in part, but also that the Lord would use him to then speak through him, and that he would get all the glory and honor. And I think that's just such a good thing. And I find myself doing that often, just praying those things to myself. So don't make a name for yourself, because it's really easy in our vocations.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's when we do the prayer of confession at our church, and I invite people to come and pray, I also have to step back and do a prayer of confession myself. And that is one of the ones that will regularly come up in my own confession is, Lord, I've sought my own glory too much. May it all be for you.
Yep.
On a less serious note, though, so what you're saying is don't go ahead and create a podcast and a music empire.
Yeah, don't do that.
It makes it double hard when your entire business, when you are your own product. I am my small business. I am my music studio.
Yeah.
So that makes it doubly difficult. But also, hi, Mom. Thanks for being in the chat. Appreciate you. And we are praying for Grandma. My grandma apparently took a fall. So if you remember, pray for Grandma Locke. My point 2?
Yeah.
So my point 2 is actually one, I learned this before becoming in vocational ministry, but it is something that has been useful all the time in ministry. And it's just been, I've come to appreciate it more and more as I aged. As a young whippersnapper in the youth group, I had the great privilege of having Scott Tomlinson as my youth group, small group leader. He was a just really cool guy, military. He was a medic, and he came and he spent all his time with the youth group, and he had lots of life lessons to give us. And as a medic, he had this saying, I love it. A good doctor sutures what needs to be sutured and cuts what needs to be cut. No more and no less. And originally, he was giving that advice to me in the context of relationships. But I have found it abundantly useful throughout my time in ministry. Because you have to, let's take the metaphor just a little bit further. If you are a doctor, if you go in for stitches and the doctor sutures more than you needed, let's say you just needed a suture on your finger and it goes all the way up your arm, the doctor has caused more harm than good.
Yeah.
In the original context of a relationship, this is like if you needed to give a box of chocolates to say I'm sorry, but instead you gave a car, you've done too much. You've gone too far in trying to fix things. On the other hand, if I needed, let's say, God forbid, I needed to have a finger or two amputated, and the doctor said, well, time to chop off the whole arm. Actually, I was watching Bluey with Lily recently, and there's an episode
Bluey,
called...
Everybody loves this show.
It's great. I was watching an episode called The Creek, and Bingo, Bluey's little sister, falls down, and... No. Bluey fell down and skinned her knee on the way down to the creek. And asked, Dad takes a look at it and goes, yep. Just gonna have to cut it off. And then Bluey goes running away and,
No!
Yep, exactly. And that's the idea of what needs to be cut, only cut off what needs to be cut. In the original context of relationships, that means that, like, let's say, that... what's a good example here? So let's say that you and your significant other, we're assuming you're not married at this point, are having trouble keeping a pure relationship. And just every time that you're inside of a car and it's just the two of you, you find yourselves making out. Well, what do? Well, the typical teenage guy response is to double back on their God told me to date you with a, hey, God told me it's time to break up, instead of taking responsibility for their own actions. Instead of cutting off the entire relationship, maybe you just have to cut off being in a dark car alone.
Yeah. Don't drive in the car together.
Yeah. Or whatever you need for your... That's not universal advice. That is whatever you need to do for your relationship. You cut off what needs to be cut off. In our own relationship, Lindsay and I needed to cut off texting. Lindsay had a very dry sense of texting, and so I would always interpret her texts as, I'm angry and frustrated with you. I'll ask her a question. What do you think about this? Okay. And for her, it was completely okay. But for me, I'm just like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And so what we did is early on in our dating stage, we said, okay, no texting. We're going to write letters to each other. And that did a world of good for us. And then later on, once we were engaged and we knew each other a little bit better, we were able to reintroduce texting because we had a better idea of how we talked.
Yeah.
So bringing
that's helpful.
bringing this policy into ministry, it's some of the biggest damage you can cause in ministry is when you overreact to something.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like, let's say that someone is pitchy, they're not getting the right notes. Well, you could come down and just cut it off. Say, okay, you're no longer part of the team. Or you can come in and you can say, okay, hey, we're having this issue. Here are some resources to help you get better. Mm-hmm. Let's go through this and let's fix this together. And maybe you say, hey, I'm not going to have you scheduled for the next 3 weeks. I want you to spend time. Here's the set list for the week that you're coming back.
Yeah.
Practice. And then let's reevaluate there.
Yeah.
So you can do things like that. You don't like suture what needs to be sutured, cut what needs to be cut.
Yeah. I think something to go off that too for moving on is
this your third one?
Yeah, it's kind of like a double thing quickly. Deal with conflict. You know, and I don't mean like with a hatchet, you know, no, like don't go in swinging into conflict, but deal with it. Don't let it fester. Don't let your offenses get all up in a roar, because it may be that the other party that offended you didn't mean to, or they meant to because you had done something in particular in the time together that maybe you weren't clear during a rehearsal, or maybe you weren't, you know, you and I, we didn't get them the songs in time, or, you know, something like that. Things can be easily remedied. But I think one of the fundamental issues in conflict you have to deal with is the heart. And a lot of times, whether it be something objective like making a decision, maybe a song decisions or anything like that, and cutting something, or more subjective, like someone has offended you or you have offended somebody else. I find that a lot of times it really just comes down to yielding ourselves to Jesus and finding ourselves satisfied in Him. And when you get there, when you humble yourself, it's a lot easier to deal with offenses. It's a lot easier to deal with conflict within the ministry landscape. And it's really hard too, because in our vocation, people have lots of opinions of what songs we should do, of why we're not doing the best songs, of why their song choices might be better, about how dynamic should be in a song. And it's easy to get offended in this kind of specific area of ministry, because singing and playing as a musician, that's an extension of us. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like that's kind of who we are, right? And what I mean by that, like Dan has a very different style of playing than I do, right? And vice versa. And so, you know, we play because our personalities play and are in the midst of that. And, you know, when someone makes a comment about either our singing voice or our playing, it's easy to get offended. And likewise, to your point earlier, when somebody's pitchy or something, that's an extension of that person, especially if you inherited that person before you even stepped into this role, right? So they're a person, and deal with conflict by first understanding all this to be a hard issue. And before you walk into that, the first thing you have to do when dealing with it is yield to Jesus, yield to the work of the Spirit. All right. And don't come in swinging a sword. Because secondly, tied together with that is if you're fresh new, or even if you've you've been in a ministry context for like 2 or 3 years. It takes time to be a shepherd. It takes time to walk into a church and deal with
people,
all the changes and all the people. Like, people don't trust you. Like, I've been at Crossing going on 8 years, and it's only like now that people kind of know who I am. Right? It takes time to be a shepherd, and it takes time for people to walk alongside you and start feeling more comfortable with you, because now you have tenure, you have longevity. You know, you've shown and you've been around that you love these people, and it's gonna hurt a lot of times. They're gonna wreck you, and you'll be frustrated. But dealing with conflict is just part of that. And coupled with that is it takes time for things to play out, for people to trust you. You're not just you shouldn't just go in and start changing things immediately. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I first started at Crossing was don't change anything for a year. Especially your first year, don't mix it up. Do what's always been done. Right? Assuming that it's not completely toxic. Assuming it's not completely toxic.
Yeah. I used to hold strongly to that. But I think that there are certain things that should be kept the same, and there are certain traditions that should be respected. But at the same time, if you have the leadership of the church behind you, they are selecting you as a worship leader because they want to see change. And that was probably one of the best things that my pastoral staff could have done, is that they clearly communicated with the team. We're hiring Dan. He has this vision of what worship should be. We were going in this direction. He's going to take us in this direction.
Right.
And so then even from year one, there was direct, like, we were changing gears in how we went.
Right. Well, see, that is the exception. That's more of an anomaly.
Yeah.
Right. Generally speaking, churches don't do that. Like, when they hire somebody, they say that that's all fine. But reality is, you start changing stuff, it's going to start hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So being able to deal with conflict and understanding that dealing with conflict is part of it, because it takes time to be a shepherd in those contexts. It takes time for you to establish relationships and build up enough relationship points and enough relationship coins that you can cash them in strategically when you need to.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Time for my number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my number 3. Spiritual abuse is real.
Mm.
And it's real bad. Not just on you, but on your family.
Yeah.
And so this is something that needs to be dealt with. Because it is very easy in ministry to find yourself in a position where you can never give enough, and whatever you give is never good enough.
Mm.
And people in positions of authority will use their positions and use their authority to try to get more from you, and not just you, but also your family.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, you especially went through something like that. And I know personally, my family has gone through that. It's so true. And I think that goes back to our first few points, right?
Mm-hmm.
You protecting yourself from being a spiritual abuser, right? Number one would be, like what you said earlier, remember that your people are volunteers, and remember that they're people, right? Remember they're people. They're not ministry assets, they're people. And then also, what I started with was, don't let the vision or dream of what you want your church to be the enemy of the church that you're placed in.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a quick, easy way for you to become that. And rely on your own skills, your own knowledge, your own credentials, your own letters after your name, whatever it be. That's how you become a spiritual abuser quick.
Yep. So
that's so true.
Don't be recognize that you could be a spiritual abuser. Don't be. And then also recognize that you could be getting abused. And if that's the case, you need to find some way to solve it. Whether that means staying and rectifying, or you could do what I did and up and leave.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, because you tried to rectify it. Sometimes there's just enough toxicity where it's best for you to remove yourself and your family, because that, here's a bonus one, right? For us who have children and have wives, that sometimes churches, they mean well, but they lump our families into ministry.
Get a 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah, and I know what they mean. Like, our wives are very talented.
Yeah.
Right? Your wife is extremely talented and can jump into many ministry roles. My wife is the same way. And, they mean well by it, but what actually happens is they deplete you. Right? They deplete those families. And so you have to be willing to understand that your volunteers and the people in your church are people. And so don't do that to them. And then you have to also realize when it happens to you, right? So those of us who are in ministry vocationally, and especially worship is what we're kind of talking about, music ministry, is like, protect your wife.
Yep.
Shepherd, first person before shepherding your team, before shepherding your church, shepherd your family, shepherd your wife. If you can't do that, or you're
setting yourself up for an explosion later on in ministry.
Oh yeah, and a disaster
and that's the thing. A lot of these things with ministry is it's a slow burn. It's a big setup with a slow burn, but then once the fire hits the keg, it explodes.
Right.
And it's only then that you look back and you go, "Oh, how do we let it get this bad?"
Yeah. Right. And Dan and I don't do this perfectly.
Oh no.
These are things that we've both learned probably the hard way, more than we'd like to admit.
Yeah.
But can't say that more. Learn to shepherd your wife. I probably don't do a great job as much as I should. And she's super great, and she teaches me a lot. And so I can speak for both Dan and I. We have great wives.
Yes, we do. And there are many times I get way too focused on my projects.
They balance us. I'm the same way. And so learn to shepherd them, and learn to know when you're in a situation, if you're experiencing spiritual abuse, and then get counseling. Don't, like, if you leave, my wife would love this right now. She'd pat me on the back. If you leave a scenario in a church where it's toxic and you're kind of experiencing this, go get help, because there's some difficulties that you went through and some trauma that you went through that you need help.
Yeah. I did not go to a counselor. I had lots of unofficial counselors help me. But even today, I still have to unwind some of that spiritual trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was a bonus one.
Yeah. Here's my bonus one.
Go for it.
If they're going to try to get you and your wife with one paycheck, remind them that they have to pay you enough for both of them. It strikes me so funny. Like, there are so many churches that look at the family and go, well, the wife should stay at home and the husband has to work. And the husband works in ministry, and you know what they don't do to the husband? They don't pay him enough for the wife to stay home.
Yep.
And I'm just like, this is in your court, guys. This is in your court.
Yeah. They want, out of the ether for us to pick enough.
It's like
I got a money tree in the backyard.
Up here in the northeast, we're in Pennsylvania. It used to be, you probably could have done it. Wife probably could have stayed home if you were making 60 to 70K.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that would not cut it. You need to be making probably between 80 to 90, if not 90 to 100, in order for both people to stay home, for wife to stay
in Bucks
home.
County.
Yeah.
I should make the caveat in case any of our leadership hears that last part. Our churches do take care of us in what they can do. And so we're very blessed to be in churches that I think care about us and love us.
And part of our job as ministers in the Northeast of the United States is serving in the way that we do. But part of that means that we are a bivocational house.
Yeah. Both of our spouses work.
Yeah, both of our spouses work. I work at the church, and then I also run my own music studio, and now I'm running a Kickstarter. It's like, it's part of what needs to be done to raise support to serve in ministry in the Northeast, because you don't have those big churches like down south where they can have one full-time music minister and one full-time youth and family minister. Like, even you're only full-time because you're youth and music.
Yeah. If I was one of those, it wouldn't work.
Yeah. And that's just how things are up here in the Northeast.
And that's not the only thing I do. Like, so, and I also do music lessons. I teach guitar and I do some voice lessons for some people. And then my wife also works. She's a private counselor on the side, and then she is also a piano teacher. Mm-hmm. So she teaches piano. So like a large portion of our income is because of music too.
So what you're saying is I shouldn't try to snatch students while I'm at the concert on Friday?
You can.
Reminder, everyone, we are playing live at Crossing Community Church next Friday.
Yeah. Oh, my wife.
Yeah.
She put on there.
Yeah,
I did. I started, Grace has on here, I started working 3 part-time jobs. So I did youth ministry. And then I worked at a pizzeria, take and bake place called Mom's in Newtown. And then I also fixed cars on the side. Yeah, so I mean, it was pretty wild.
Mm-hmm. And my mother has a great point too. Insurance is a big deal.
Oh yeah. So it is.
Like Lily was in the NICU for a week. That hospital bill was something like $215,000. But because Lindsay gets insurance through her teaching position, we ended up paying like $200.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast, is insurance.
Yeah. So, but all of that to say, our ministries do take care of us. They are doing really well with the resources that they have. But please just understand that we're no longer in an economy where the wife can stay home at that level.
Yeah, no.
Like, rent for a 1-bedroom apartment, you are going to be lucky if you can find it for $1,500, $1,600.
Yeah, I mean, we lucked out. It went up just a little bit, but we have our apartment, and it's 2 bedrooms for, I think, $1,300 a month.
Whoa, jealous.
Yeah. So, but you got a house.
Yeah, I got a house, and it's the same as the mortgage is the same as my rent.
That's nice.
Yeah, well, it's a bad state. It's more indicative of the state of the economy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you, Grace. Yep. Yeah, we move into the house this Saturday. We are very excited.
Yep.
Also, thank you, Mom. As a true millennial, we could not have gotten the house without the help of my parents. So I will admit that publicly. Yeah. So, well, there have been some ministry tips. You have anything else you want to share, Jared?
I think that's it, man. I mean, I could go on probably,
but we've already
probably shouldn't.
Yeah, we're 25 minutes over what we want to do. So then let's just wrap this up. So some reminders for you all. June 23rd, Friday the 23rd, 2 big things happen. Number 1, the Kickstarter ends at midnight. So get your pledges in before then if you want to be part of this. Number 2, Jared and I, we are playing through the full album at his church, Crossing Community Church, on June 23rd. 6:30 p.m., right?
6:30.
Yep. Should we push that back to 7? Because work day?
I think all of our people are good for it.
Okay. Yep. But 6:30, June 23rd. Tickets are on Eventbrite. Look for Lock and Kane on Eventbrite. It's published by the Worshipping Songwriter. And
it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, it's gonna be a really good time. Mom, we're gonna miss you too, but you should have fun at the beach. Okay. So, anything else to share, Jared?
I think that's it, man.
Okay. Well, this has been Lock and Kane with the Worshipping Songwriter podcast. Hope that you have a good one. And if you haven't already, check out the Kickstarter. Have a good night.
Good night.